A GREENPOINT Williamsburg Public Affairs presentation. This is Neighborhoods Today.
Hello and welcome to another edition of Neighborhoods Today. I'm REENA PELC. The People's Firehouse is a grassroots organization based in northern Brooklyn. 20 years ago, their main focus was fire safety and prevention. And while they're still advocates for fire safety and protection, their focus has changed. Today, the People's Firehouse is also involved with community development projects like anti-arson and outreach programs, and of course the People's Firehouse School. Stay with me because when we come back, I'll be talking with the People's Firehouse Administrator and the Director of Outreach and Anti-Arson Programs.
He protects all living things in the forest. But he can't do it alone. Please don't play with matches. Put out your campfires. And never, ever forget the words of Smokey Bear.
Only you can prevent forest fires.
I'm in the studio with John Ernst, who is a part of the People's Firehouse, and I believe you're called the administrator at the People's Firehouse, right, John?
Among the many things I'm called, that's one of my official titles, is as administrator. I'm also a program director at the People's Firehouse.
Mm-hmm. What exactly does administrator mean in terms of what you do in the People's Firehouse?
Well, primarily make sure that the various programs and projects that we're running and taking part in run smoothly and hopefully without a hitch and are well funded. That's the task.
Funding is always, I'm sure, an arduous task.
It's not easy these days, right?
No, definitely not. Well, I know that you have a teaching background, as a matter of fact, a very interesting background, and I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about your teaching days.
Well, I started teaching, I think I was telling somebody earlier today that my first teaching job was actually on television.
Really?
Yes.
Oh, tell me about this.
Back in the Catholic school system in St. Louis, I had just graduated from college and was looking for a teaching job, and in order to take one, they said I had to agree to teach geometry on television. So I taught geometry on television. After that, I moved into college teaching and taught in Mississippi, Roxbury, and then I had a job with the post office training teachers for a while. Let's see, that takes me up halfway through my teaching career. And then I taught on Long Island at SUNY College at Old Westbury, and I also taught for Empire State College here in New York.
Right. So I guess you can say you're kind of coming full circle because now you're on Neighborhoods Today.
Back in the neighborhood, right.
Yeah.
Right.
Funny how things like that happen.
Yes, yes.
How did you manage to get involved with the People's Firehouse?
Well, in my academic career, if you will, I was more or less forced to, rather, get involved with computers, doing database management for a small school.
Right.
And the People's Firehouse called me, heard about me, and gave me a call and said, "We've got this computer system that's not working. Can you come and help?" And this was back in, I guess, about 1987. And what they had was the system that they had purchased and developed back in 1982, and it was a arson information database system. And the idea was to monitor the neighborhood by using the computer so that they could to develop arson prediction scores.
Yes.
So each building in the community had a score. The higher the score, the more likely that the building might be, if you will, if buildings can be victims, a victim of arson.
Sure.
Okay, that particular system, the computer system, was developed in a language called DBase 2, and I knew some DBase 2 from my school days, so I got involved that way.
Wow. And I know another one of the projects that you oversee, a very big project which seems to be doing really well, is the People's Firehouse School. And I'm wondering how the People's Firehouse School came to fruition, because it's relatively new.
Yes, we've only done that in the last couple of years. that came about because we were helping another group, New York nonprofit computer group. And what they were doing was collecting old computers and trying to fix them and give them to community groups. What they were desperate for was space. And what we were able to do through our various housing programs was arrange some space for them. And what we found was they were an all-volunteer group, that we were doing a lot of the work most of the time, which was fine. We were picking up the computers, taking them to our place, and storing them, and then whenever we could get a volunteer to fix them, it was fine. We then managed to obtain funding to get some of these computers working again. So once we've hired some people that could do the fixing, we thought, what do we do with the computers? Well, there were obviously two things. One was to train people to use computers in the community, and the other was to help out other community groups by giving computers to them in the neighborhood. So we did get a federal grant to do this kind of work. The thing we found out was that for people to use the computer, many of them really needed other skills as well, like English as a second language, which is we started then to teach what are called ESL, English as a Second Language classes. So we run English as a Second Language classes and computer classes at the People's School. We also train people to do computer repair. So those three aspects are what we refer to within the Firehouse as the People's School.
Right. Now, the ESL classes, are they solely English, Spanish? Because I believe there's a large Polish population also. There's a Hasidic community.
Well, we've run the class with ESL. The theory is that you can have people speaking many different languages as their first language in a class.
Right.
And you're teaching English as a second language, so you don't have the Polish speakers in one room and the Spanish speakers in another room. You put them together. The response to the school is from all communities, as you mentioned. I mean, we've got Polish-speaking people. We have people from the Hasidic community, where you find many different languages within the community itself. And then, of course, we have Spanish-speaking people. So, and we recruit teachers mainly from the college community to come in and teach these classes. So they're taught almost the same way they would be at a college that's trying to do ESL work for people in the community.
Right. I'm curious as to how large your staff is right now and some of the other classes that the People's Firehouse would be offering.
Okay, we offer, I'd say right now we're starting up October 16th, 10 sections of ESL, and we'll be running 15 sections of, call it computer classes. I mean, that would be word processing, spreadsheets, some database, and we also run classes training people how to use the internet. So 10 plus 15, I'll say there's 25 sections there. And generally speaking, we staff that up with, I would say, anywhere from 15 to 20 part-time or adjunct teachers, again, mostly from the college community.
Right. Are there any plans for expansion? I'm sure as the school grows and people find out about what the People's Firehouse is offering.
Well, we'd love to seize another building in order to really have a school. I mean, I think our plan right now, what we're trying to do is develop the school to the point where it can be accredited.
Right.
And hopefully, one day maybe even, you might even be able to refer to it as Williamsburg College, who knows, or the University of Williamsburg, to really dream.
That'd be great. I'm also wondering what other nonprofit groups in the community the People's Firehouse might have been able to give computers to. You mentioned that before.
Anyone who asked for a computer, any organization that's asked for a computer, nonprofit in CB1, has gotten something from us.
Right.
And that would include UJO, School Settlement, I think the Northside Community Development Corporation. We've worked with the Northside Senior Citizen Center. In other words, and the Graham Street Merchants Association. I mean, it doesn't matter how big they are or how small they are. If we've got the equipment that we've been able to pick up, repair, and fix up, it's theirs. I mean, it's not that we can't use it. Our little building right now, we've got our training facility set up. Mm-hmm. So we're really not into like accumulating computers for computer's sake. Right. We do have a repair operation that we run, and as computers come out of that, they're for the community.
Well, I think the other thing that's really important that you probably should mention is what the cost is for people in the community to take these classes at the People's Firehouse, because you can't find prices like this at a lot of places.
Zero. If you live in the community and come to the class and finish the class, it costs you absolutely nothing. We might ask you to buy a book, and that's it. But you're not going to get computer instruction, you're right, anywhere cheaper.
No.
Our price beats everybody.
It's
funded by the federal government, so
Right.
we're happy to provide it to the community.
Yeah, it's very, very difficult to find, and it's a dynamite program. The classes are really, really great. But I also know that the People's Firehouse works somehow in conjunction with LaGuardia Community College and students from LaGuardia. What's that about?
Yeah, that's one of our internship programs. LaGuardia students come to LaGuardia Community College students essentially become workers at our place as interns, and we also provide them with classes, particularly in computer repair. And they're there for what they call their semester, which is really like a trimester, and 20 hours a week. And at the end of that time, generally speaking, particularly ones coming out of the computer repair classes, have been able to get pretty good jobs in the field. So that's sort of a fast track if you're looking for work, is to call us about our computer repair classes.
That's excellent. Absolutely fantastic. Looking toward the future, are there any projects in particular that you have on the drawing board that you can talk about? Anything that you are contemplating doing or you would like to do moving forward?
Well, I think moving forward, as I said earlier, the major thing we'd like to do is establish ourselves in the community as a resource, an educational resource. And to do so, it seems as though the way to go is by getting accreditation. In other words, that would allow students to still come to us, have zero costs,
Right.
and because they could get student aid and things like that, and we'd be able to fund our teaching staff through that. And that, to me, would be ideal. It seems to me Williamsburg GREENPOINT has been too long neglected in terms of the placement of educational resources. Coming out of the academic world as I did, and when I came to the community, I thought, you really have to leave the community in order to get a public education. And what we'd like to do is provide, if you will, a public education at reasonable prices. In other words, maybe we wouldn't even have to go up in tuition as much as CUNY or somewhere like that. I think we could run an operation, that is, on the one hand, solid academically, but on the other hand, financially affordable and geared to the community.
Again, I'm wondering how this also might kick in terms of what's going on with welfare and welfare reform, and people now having to really try and get themselves off or out of the system within 5 years. You have to have training. Training is just so very important.
Right. I mean, it is. I think people have to be given, if you're going to say to people, you've got to work, we're not going to give you any more handouts, you've got to be able to say at least, well, here's the tools you need to work. And I think one of the things that an operation like ours, the People's School, can provide is
Certainly.
tools.
Absolutely. Well, we'll be rooting for you, and certainly know that you guys, as you move forward, you'll be doing fantastic work, and you'll be doing a lot more. Thank you so much for stopping by. We really appreciate it.
Okay, good to be here.
Great to have you here and talk to you. But the interview is not over yet. Please stay with us. Don't go away. We're going to break for a short public service announcement, and when we come back, I'll be talking with Kurt Hill, who is the Director of Outreach Programs and Anti-Arson. Be right back.
These are teachers, but to the kids they've reached, they're heroes. Be a teacher. Be a hero. Call 1-800-45-TEACH.
I'm with Kurt Hill, who is the Director of, I believe, Outreach Programs and Anti-Arson Programs at the People's Firehouse.
That's correct.
Welcome to Neighborhoods Today. It's great to have you here.
Thank you so much for having us.
And I've seen you at the People's Firehouse before, but I never quite knew what you did, but I always knew you were always running around and always doing 15,000 things, it seemed, at the same time.
Yes, indeed.
I'm curious to find out how long, first of all, you've been involved with the People's Firehouse.
Well, I've been at People's Firehouse for about 4.5 years now, I believe.
Well, how did you find out about the People's Firehouse?
Well, a friend of mine told me that they needed an activist who had writing skills and reporting skills to do work in terms of outreach to community organizations and to individuals and to tenants and tenant organizations. And so I got my resume and went over and had an interview and was hired.
And I'm curious as to where you were before the People's Firehouse. Did you have that same type of background?
Yes and no. On my resume, formally, for most jobs I apply, no. My background is in publishing, in editing, in journalism.
Mm-hmm.
Unofficially, yes, very much so. I've been an activist for progressive causes since the anti-Vietnam War movement in the 60s. So it was a position that I was very happy to get.
Excellent. That doesn't happen every day.
No, it doesn't.
No. Well, what were you doing at the People's Firehouse when you first came on board?
Primarily, I was doing individual tenant counseling, or learning how to do individual tenant counseling, since I really hadn't done that aspect before. And also putting together some publications such as the People's Firehouse Bulletin.
Right.
That was basically what I was doing when I first came there.
And is that what you're doing now? Or?
I'm doing that as well, but my responsibilities have expanded with each year, so to speak. And my experience and ability to do a number of things has expanded as well, so I'm doing a lot of very interesting things.
Well, I believe also, right now, as I mentioned, you are working with outreach and anti-arson programs. Can you explain exactly what that means? Let's maybe start with some of the outreach programs.
Well, outreach, that involves, for example, talking to community groups about fire safety and anti-arson prevention, mentioning some of the things that Adam talked about earlier, some of the arson warning signs, for example, teaching people fire safety, exit drills in the home, the Edith program to teach particularly children to get out of a serious fire situation safely.
Can you just elaborate a little for us in terms of what the Edith program is?
Well, it's a program that's been going on for a number of years where families are encouraged to develop, prior to a fire emergency, a couple of escape plans, a main plan and an alternate plan, usually, to get the family out. And the family members will sit down and they'll discuss this. Oftentimes, a little map will be made of the apartment or the home, and people will figure out if a fire begins here in the kitchen, how does everyone get out? If a fire begins in the living room, how does everyone get out? And then people are taught or learn their exit drills, so to speak.
Do you then work in conjunction with the fire department or other organizations?
Yes, we do, but most of the work that we do is on our own. We do certainly collaborate with the fire department when that's possible. During Welcome Back to Brooklyn, for example, we were always over there by the fire department passing out fire safety information and that type of thing, anti-arson material.
And have you had an opportunity to now also deal with community groups outside of the Greenpoint, Williamsburg area? Is that a part and parcel of what you do?
Certainly it is. As Adam mentioned previously, we have had requests from all over the country, and we do have requests from all over the city. I've traveled to Manhattan a number of times to give presentations on fire safety, the history of the People's Firehouse, anti-arson strategies, and that type of thing.
I'm kind of curious to find out as to how other people find out or have found out about the People's Firehouse.
Well, word of mouth, I think, is probably the biggest factor in terms of people coming to us. People hear about a program, for example, have a problem with a landlord, or a landlord has a problem with a tenant. Through word of mouth, well, I went to the People's Firehouse. They helped me out with this. Why don't you go down and see somebody there? So we get a lot of the best advertisement, I think, which is word of mouth suggestions.
Mm-hmm. You also had mentioned to me in the past involvement with a couple of other organizations, I believe, like Fire and Sanitation Coalition. What is the Fire and Sanitation Coalition?
Well, the Fire and Sanitation Coalition is a group that was founded a number of years ago to fight the problems that happened, for example, in the South Bronx in the 70s when fire protection was removed. Fire protection and other services were removed in a conscious strategy to deprive the neighborhoods there of fire protection, and arsons just went on like crazy. It didn't happen in Brooklyn because of groups like the People's Firehouse and Los Sordos and St. Nick's and Ridgewood Bushwick, our sister organizations, which were founded about the same time, and also pursue anti-arson strategies.
And you've also mentioned another organization called CAFE.
Right, the Community Alliance for the Environment. CAFE has been around for about 15 years now, and its principal focus has been opposing the Brooklyn Navy Yard incinerator. And we've had a number of actions. We've blocked traffic, we've marched over the Brooklyn Bridge with 1,500 people to have a meeting with folks in the Lower East Side who are also concerned. And at this point it looks like we've been successful in that fight, and that that incinerator isn't going to be built.
Yeah, that has certainly been a huge thorn, certainly in the GREENPOINT Williamsburg community
Indeed, it
side.
has.
And it's nice to see groups banding together. I know of a few other organizations who've also mentioned the People's Firehouse, and they said yes, with their help we all kind of banded together and we worked on it, you know, shoulder to shoulder. You had also mentioned there's a new letter, I believe a letter, a monthly journal that comes out from the People's Firehouse, that which you were the editor of?
Yes, it's called the People's Firehouse Bulletin, and we send it out on a monthly basis. Sometimes there's a delay. In the summer, for example, there's a delay. We have somewhat of a delay this month because we're going to be having a special issue dealing with safety issues in the firehouses themselves in the city.
Mm-hmm. And in terms of some of the issues you're working on right now and projects you might be spearheading, what's on your plate right now?
Well, again, with the Fire and Sanitation Coalition and folks, we're working right now to obtain the district-by-district analyses of how many fireboxes are going to be removed. We were able to get 2/3 of them put back, basically, through community pressure and citizen pressure. And now we want to take a good look at the reports that are being issued in those areas and neighborhoods where they say they're going to be eliminating fireboxes.
Now, how difficult has it been trying to obtain that information?
Well, this summer they told us that a report on each of these areas would be available soon, and we haven't heard anything yet. And we've been making phone calls, I assure you, and no one else in the coalition has heard anything yet about that. So it seems like they're dragging their heels on this.
So who would the proverbial they be?
Well, the City of New York, the fire commissioner, Mr. Von Essen, I guess, though he may be inheriting that program, or that problem rather, be inheriting that problem. But it's certainly frustrating. People are waiting. We want to see what neighborhoods are going to be affected.
Absolutely. And if there was a pet project that you could work on or something you could undertake, what might that be?
Actually, that's difficult to say. There's so many problems. I think at this particular juncture, with all the bills in Congress working to preserve affordable housing for people, to prevent homelessness, to make sure that Williamsburg and Greenpoint are affordable places for the average person to live.
Not an easy thing to do.
No, it isn't.
And on that note, believe it or not, we're out of time already. I wanted to thank you very much for stopping by
Thank you so much.
and talking with us here at Neighborhoods Today. We'll be on the lookout for you guys and all different kinds of things that you might be involved with. And for any of you out there who are interested in the People's Firehouse and would like a little more information, or if you would like to volunteer, I'm assuming you do take volunteers.
Oh, indeed we do.
They do take volunteers. Please do feel free to reach someone at the People's Firehouse, and you can reach them at 718-388-4696. Once again, that's 718-388-4696. That's it for this edition of Neighborhoods Today. Thank you for joining us. Hope to see you again next time.
With COVID-19 contributing to more sickness and death across our nation, America's physicians have 3 simple steps you can take to stop the spread. First, wash your hands. Second, stay at least 6 feet from others. And third, mask up. At the American Medical Association, we know that following the science and evidence will protect you and your loved ones. With science, we will defeat COVID-19 together.